Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to implement customer satisfaction related pay. My name is Greg Roche and I'm a director at TLF Research. Apologies, you shouldn't ever start the presentation off with an apology, but apologies if you can hear some background noise. We're having the road outside the building is currently being relayed with some rather noisy machines that we didn't know about, but hopefully that won't disrupt today's webinar. So in terms of what we're going to go through today, I think it's going to last about 20-25 minutes. We're going to do a couple of minutes on who TLF Research are, and then we're going to do five to 6 minutes on the benefits of having customer satisfaction pay. We're then going to look at some of the pitfalls. It is a subject which has many pitfalls, and done well it works, done badly it doesn't work. So I'm going to point out some of the common pitfalls we've come across with our clients. We're going to have a look at different types of schemes in terms of metrics and in terms of sample size, in terms of measurement, in terms of timings as well, how often it should be done, and in terms of the administration of the schemes, things you need to think about, typically how much does a scheme pay, what HR rules are around it, and those sort of practical things that would help you sort of implement a scheme. And then I'm going to sort of wrap it up at the end with really sort of highlighting some of the top tips for making customer satisfaction pay a success for your organization. Just before I do that, a little bit about myself and the organization I work for, TLF Research. I've been doing customer satisfaction measurement now for 18 years. That's a lot of time standing in boardrooms presenting customer satisfaction results and helping organizations implement those results, and that's very much where customer satisfaction pay comes along, because it's not just about delivering customer research, it's about implementing change. As an organization, TLF Research, we think we do more customer satisfaction surveys than anyone else in the UK. We've currently got 121 live projects coming via various different types of data collection methodologies, whether it's phone, email, text, web. I'm going to come back to data collection methodology a little bit later on in terms of when we look at making sure the measurement is consistent. We do our own client survey. We're really sort of proud to see that we're in the top 5% when we benchmark ourselves. It does mean 1 out of 20 of our clients is better at this than we are, but hey ho, every day is a school day and you can always learn something. The type of organizations that TLF work with when we do sort of our customer satisfaction surveys is across many sectors. We do fan satisfaction surveys for the football clubs, we do patient satisfaction surveys for hospitals, we do leaseholder and tenant satisfaction surveys for housing associations, we do membership satisfaction surveys for membership organizations, we do B2B satisfaction surveys, often either sort of pan-European or global in different languages in the B2B section, and then we do the typical B2C customer satisfaction surveys as well. We're also really proud to work for the Institute of Customer Service, the ICS, where we work with them in producing the national measure of UK customer satisfaction that they use and publish. As an organisation, we also do training courses and briefings. If you're interested in any of these, please either contact Charlotte or look on the website. Customer journey mapping is particularly popular at the moment, as is Net Promoter Score versus ease of doing business versus customer satisfaction measurement. And I name check that one on purpose because when we come to look at headline metrics, I'm going to explain a little bit about the pros and cons of those, but there is a full sort of training event on which of those measurements is most suitable for your organization. Okay, so let's start off about why do you have customer satisfaction related pay. A couple of weeks ago we did the webinar on top 10 things that world-class organizations do, and I'm just going to recap on some of the conclusions and the actions that sort of come out of that and how that relates to customer satisfaction pay. So in terms of any sort of research, any sort of things, we're all after organizational success. In a commercial sense, that could be profit, it could be surplus. We're after organizational success. And one of the drivers of making an organization success is making sure that customers behave in a certain way. Let's call that loyalty. behave in a certain way that's advantageous to that organization. And that's pretty powerful stuff, getting someone to behave in a way that's advantageous to your organization. So typically in a sort of commercial situation, that would be wanting people to buy more, refer more, complain less, recommend more, become cheaper to service, become less price sensitive, and not look at the competitors. All really good behaviors that if a customer does that, it helps the organization be more successful. And what's the driver of that? What makes customers behave in a certain way? Well, it's how they're treated, how satisfied or dissatisfied they are. And I pause and hold and highlight those two things separately. Loyalty is a behavior, satisfaction is a feeling. The idea being that if you treat customers in a way that makes them satisfied often enough, they will then behave in a way that's advantageous to the business. Equally, if you treat customers in a way which makes them unhappy, dissatisfied, they will behave in a different way that would be not advantageous to the business. They will complain, they will tell people about it, they will go on social media, etc., etc. Now, one of the main drivers of customer satisfaction, and whenever you go to any conference on customer satisfaction, customer experience, you always end up talking about these people, employees. You know, these are the people who make it happen. And if I put all those things together, we really have just recapitulated a service profit chain published by Professor Heskett around about 2001 from Harvard. And he put together in the book some case studies that show how a change in employee satisfaction or commitment of X% led to an increase in customer satisfaction of Y%, led to customer loyalty changing A%, and then organization success going up B%. But if we think about that, in essence, getting customer feedback, it's all about changing employees' behaviors. Because for your customers to be more satisfied tomorrow than they are today, someone's going to do something different in your organization tomorrow than they're doing today. Whether that's inventing a new product, changing a process, seeing things in a different way. So when you think about that, all this is actually about changing employees' behaviors. And that's very much where customer satisfaction pay comes in as well. So we have a benchmarking league table that we put all our organizations on that we work with. There's over 1,200 organizations on that league table that we've done customer satisfaction surveys for. And one of the things that we've done is interrogate the data at the top of that league table, looked at which organizations are at the top of the league table, and looked at what traits they would have in common. What sort of things do they do better than others? And in the previous webinar we've highlighted 10 traits that they did or they have. Senior management commitment, understanding perception is reality, don't let paralysis by analysis cause inaction, focus on priorities for improvement, do things and do them quickly, good communication to staff customer needs, aligning targets and bonuses, which is the one we're going to sort of focus on today, not just for sort of employees, number 7, but for external suppliers, number 8. They also have a robust process for handling problems and the impactful communication on the "you said we did" mantra. So today we're very much going to focus on number 7 in terms of linking targets and bonuses to keep employees motivated and focused through customer satisfaction pay. But that does also link to number 1 in terms of senior management commitment. We are running the top 10 webinar again on Tuesday the 5th of December at 11 o'clock. If you'd like to sort of sign up for that, we'll go through that in more detail. So customer satisfaction pay, one of the top things that people do. So what are the pitfalls for it? Well, I think the phrase "be careful what you wish for" is very, very relevant and is relevant with all bonus schemes. So bonus schemes do change people's behavior. The secret is to change it in a way you want them to behave, a way that's advantageous to increasing customer satisfaction, that's going to increase customer loyalty and therefore make organizations more successful. I think we've all got various examples where bonus schemes haven't worked. Where it just hasn't been the case, where they've introduced behaviors that are not advantageous to the customers, nor to customer loyalty, nor to the organization. And the legacies of these go on. You know, the loss of trust remains over a long period of time. and balance sheets that are being published today are still showing that these legacies are affecting them. So for any sort of customer satisfaction related pay, data is going to be collected. And like all good research, you know, what sort of data do you want? We want things that are accurate, honest, clear, unbiased, reliable. They're the sort of data that any good researcher wants, and quite often that's why independent research companies are used, because that helps achieve some of those things. So one of the pitfalls of when you've got a measurement in place or a customer satisfaction pay, one of the first pitfalls, there's probably 3 pitfalls, is you get extreme focus on the score. So once compensation depends on once compensation depends on improving a particular score, people can tend to focus on that metric rather than on what it's telling us about our customers. So rather than focusing their efforts on improving the company's products or the customer experience, employees tend to devote time and energy to explaining or criticizing the metric itself. Ideally, what we're looking for are the behaviors that drive getting people to do the right behaviors and rewarding those behaviors that drive the customer experience, and then the score will follow in its wake. The problem is people shortcut it. They just want to know what's the score, because suddenly all that matters is the score, not doing the behaviors. And one of the things that we see as a research company is quite often clients, they're so focused on the score. They call up and ask, what's the score? Whereas some other clients call up and say, hey, you know, are we doing the things more that are making our customers more satisfied? Let me tell you a story about a rather large financial organization that we work for that had customer satisfaction related pay and was coming across this pitfall that people were so focused on the score. For a set of results, the gentleman who commissioned the work, our client contact, said, Greg, this month, or for this presentation, do not put the score up. I just want you to come with the customer comments, the qualitative, the verbatim feedback, because I want people to put the whole emphasis into hearing what customers are saying, not whether we've hit the score or not hit the score. So that's one of the pitfalls that can come from having that. A second pitfall is what's called gamification, which we might call fiddling or fudging the results. So we all know that employees can be very creative and often are very creative. However, sometimes they can bring that creativity and determination into trying to fiddle or fudge or game the scores. Things such as burying unhappy customers, putting wrong digits on phone numbers so they never get phoned up, or putting extra things in email addresses so they never get emailed is one of the common ways that people do gaming, or just select happy customers to be interviewed. I think we've probably all experienced in retail when someone sort of hands you a till receipt and says, if you mention my name, I'll get a bonus if you do that survey. Again, that's an example of gaming, and sometimes you actually get just outright begging happening. Recently, my wife bought a new car, and when she came to collect it, the salesman handed over the car to her and said to her, you will be receiving a customer satisfaction survey, about me in this process. If you score me sort of as high as you can, I'll happily fill the car up with petrol now, which is obviously an offer she took up. Now just think about that. Just think about that. You know, not only is that costing the organisation money for the petrol being filled up, it's also putting misinformation into that organisation. Decisions are going to be being made off wrong information there. So one of the things to be really conscious of is gaming. We know employees can be very creative. It's better if they're creative in ways that helps customers rather than just trying to alter the metric. The third common pitfall that we come across is where a scheme causes staff disengagement or disaffection. That's for 2 reasons really. One is the score or the metric isn't stable, it's not reliable. And if that's the case, really be ready for some hassle. When you introduce a scheme like this, some employees will become mini stats experts. They'll talk about margins of errors, reliability, significant changes, significant testing, and they'll start asking you questions about why we're doing this at the 95% confidence level, not the 90% confidence level or the 85% confidence level, which would make targets easier to hit. So you need to have an accurate and reliable measurement. The second reason is when people don't understand the links between their scores and their behaviours. It's got to be obvious what you're trying to encourage and why that's going to make a difference to the organisational success. If you don't do that, as soon as a score drops, you will find it's everyone else's fault and there'll be a lot of finger pointing going on. There's a really good sort of article, The Dangers of Linking Customer Satisfaction Dangers of Linking Pay to Customer Satisfaction Feedback in the Harvard Business Review by Rob Markey. Rob Markey is one of the co-authors of the Net Promoter Score. So there's some of the pitfalls. So let's think about the different scheme designs. A question to think really early on is, and a lot of these questions sort of depend on your culture and what you're trying to achieve and the way in which you're trying to achieve it. At what level are you going to have the bonus placed? Are you going to have a high level, company thank you for everyone, or do it at a low level where it's a very personal level of performance? Is it going to be the overall company, division, department, team, individual, or actually all of the above? I've seen examples of all those different ones. Some people have combinations. Another organisation that we work with actually has it on 3 levels. And again, this somewhat determines on your culture. They have it at an overall level as a bit of a thank you for everyone. They have it at a team level and also at an individual level. Their logic being they definitely want it down at an individual level. They want people within, they want individuals to be part of a team, so they want to reinforce the team level, and then they have it at an overall company level. So in terms of different scheme designs, let's think a little bit about the metric. So there's probably 4 metrics. Net Promoter Score, which comes from the how likely or unlikely are you to recommend question on a 1 to 10 scale, where you've got your promoters 9 and 10, and you subtract your detractors 1 to 6, and you ignore your passive 7 to 8, and you end up with a Net Promoter Score. Pros and cons of this score, very briefly, in terms of using it for customer satisfaction related pay. Pros is it's very benchmarkable, it's very public, it's very well known, it's very simple to understand. Cons for it is it doesn't work across all sectors, and it is not a reliable measurement, or it's a less reliable measurement than some of the others we're going to suggest. That's because it comes from a single question. Every individual question has random error in it. So in terms of something of sample sizes, which we'll sort of come to a little bit later, it's not as reliable a measurement as some of the other measurements. Top box scoring, this is often where you get a percentage of top box scoring. The pro for that is it certainly sends out a signal that you're trying to do your best for customers. The downside on that is, again, that it's a single question, but also some customers will never top box score because you can always do things better. The third out of the 4 measurements, ease of doing business or customer effort score. This is very much latest thinking in terms of making it easy to do business with organisations. Very relevant to some sectors, not relevant to other sectors. You need to be sure that that does link to your organisation goals. One of the sort of pros from it is it is quite easy to say to staff, even if they aren't really brought into customer satisfaction, make it easy to work with. Can you please make it easy for our customers? The 2 sort of cons or the downside to that is A, again, it's a single question, and B, it's not relevant for all sectors. The 4th measurement, which is the one we prefer and the one that's used most often in our experience with our clients, is the Customer Satisfaction Index. This is a weighted index based on what's important to customers. The pros and cons for this, the pros is it's the most reliable of those 4 measurements. The American Marketing Institute have said to get a reliability for a Net Promoter Score the same as a Customer Satisfaction Index, you need 17 times the sample size to do it. A Customer Satisfaction Index is more reliable and accurate because it's not a single question, it's a compound answer built with various requirements, so it doesn't have as much random error and it doesn't have the fluctuation in it. The downside to that is it takes more time to explain to people what it is, because it is more mathematically and academically strong. They're the four usual headline measurements. One of the things also to think about in terms of where people often go wrong is setting a realistic target. I've seen various examples where people have said, you know, we want to have a customer satisfaction index over 90% next year, or we want top box scoring at 80%, and it's just very, very unrealistic from the base they're starting at. Improving customer satisfaction is a tough thing to do. It's a long haul, and the higher customer satisfaction you have, the more difficult it is to prove. It's not a linear line for improvement. It's very much an eclipse, so it gets tougher and harder to do the higher up you are. What I'd advise on target setting is either use your historical data to see what's reasonable year on year, but I really would suggest at this moment, in terms of setting targets, you go to a specialist. We advise on targets. We've got an algorithm that we've actually built up over the last 20 years that looks at what targets we set, whether people hit them, what scores they actually hit, and we can give advice on those sort of things, whether you want to set a conservative target, an ambitious target, or a realistic target. So in terms of the metric and the ways of collecting the metric, we need to have something that is accurate and reliable, certainly. We need to have something that's statistically reliable, certainly. This will mean conversations will have to happen about sample size and reliabilities. And keep in mind, there could be an awful lot of money being paid out on these things, so these really need to be scrutinized and to stand statistical testing. Sample size, we would usually say in customer satisfaction research, to get a reliable measurement, you need 200 responses. Now that might be okay at the overall level, but with the organization I've referred to before, where they're doing it on 3 levels, overall, team and individual, it doesn't go down to 200 responses by individual. So you have to find up a way of getting it so it can sort of build up there that provides some degree of reliability at all those levels. Usually, this is a bit more sort of anecdotal, but most of the sort of schemes that we work on that go down to an individual level, you might be looking at a sample size of around about 20 at the individual level. It's also important you have consistent data collection methodology. One of the things when you swap methodologies is you introduce variation into the results. So self-completion style questionnaires, whether that's web surveys, text surveys, or the old-style postal surveys, they can introduce a negative non-response bias. The only people who fill them in are the people that are unhappy. So if you're moving from telephone interviews to web surveys, you can see your score drop. If you're moving from web surveys to telephone interviews, you can see your score going up. And those movements have nothing to do with changes in customer satisfaction. It's because a different data collection methodology is used. As always, we'd suggest you do tests on that so you understand the impact of it. Also, making sure you ask the questions in the same order can have an impact. We did some consultancy for a very large financial services company that supplied life products, life insurance, pensions, those sorts of things. And they started their questionnaire, they were using Net Promoter Score, how likely or unlikely to recommend, and they started their questionnaire with that question. So they got a front of mind answer, and that's what they used to bonus people. One of the things they were thinking of doing was moving that question to the end of the questionnaire. And we said, whoa, let's just test it before you do it, because the order in which you ask questions can alter the score. And what we did, it was a really large test, some really big sample sizes. We had a control group. And one of the things we found is when we moved that question to the end of the questionnaire, the score improved. And there was a control group there. I was saying, hold on, why has it improved? Well, it depends what you're asking for. When we were asking the question at the beginning of the questionnaire, the answer you get is front of mind. How likely or unlikely would you be to recommend them? You have a view. When it was being asked at the end of the questionnaire, by the time they got to that question, they'd been asked various other things about, are you happy or sad with this? How satisfied, dissatisfied Are you with that? And by the time they got to the end of the questionnaire, they were going, oh, actually, this organisation's, yeah, probably better than I thought. And they were giving a higher recommend score. And what that is, that's really the difference between front of mind scoring, if you're asking at the front, or preconditioned considered scoring, if you're asking it at the end. Whichever of those that you decide to go for, that's obviously up to you and is fine. We would just encourage it to be consistent. Again, you don't want to be changing the way the data is collected and making that affect the score. So, how much should you pay for a customer satisfaction related pay? Again, amounts vary. Perhaps a month's salary would be impactful. This really does link to number one of those top 10 senior management commitments, but an amount which I think people would see as serious. And there's a couple of other things when it comes to payment. Do you have an open scheme or a limited competitive scheme? So an open scheme might be where everyone can get the bonus on it at a company level or at a team level. If the team hits it, everyone gets the bonus. A competitive scheme is one where just a certain proportion of employees get it, like those who have the top 25% of scores or those that have the top 50% of scores. That does encourage competition. You have to be careful for gaming going on in that. I've never personally really seen much evidence of people sabotaging other people's scores, but I've seen plenty of times people doing gaming to try and get their own score higher. In terms of the amount that you pay, there's probably a couple of thoughts on that, again dependent on your culture. Do you give everyone an equal lump sum, or do you get a percentage of salary? Here at TLF Research, we give everyone the same amount, £500, partly because it fits into our culture of we're in this together, we're a team, chain as strong as the weakest link. Some organisations do it as a percent of salary, but obviously in that case it is an unequal or a different amount to each person. And how often should this be done? Most customer satisfaction surveys tend to be done annually. Most bonus schemes work better if it's done quicker, but with something like this, in terms of getting the measurements reliable, annually seems to be the one that works best. Okay, to start pulling it to a bit of a conclusion, in terms of the administration behind the scheme, there's a couple of things to sort of think about before you approach it. You certainly need to have all the HR rules sorted out before the scheme begins, not to do it when the scheme has been launched. Things such as who qualifies, you know, when, where, how the monies are going to be paid, what happens to people who joined halfway through the year, what happens to people on probation periods, what happens to people who leave on the 12th month. Those sort of things need to be decided beforehand. Probably the other thing to sort of think about is in terms of having a challenge process or not. Some organisations have a challenge process. What that tends to mean is sometimes you'll get feedback from a customer that is just untrue. And you can go down the route, the perception is reality. But let's take, for example, some feedback where the customer say that member of staff did not update me. And that member of staff may be able to dig out an email that shows they did update that customer, and in fact the customer replied to it, so they did update that member of staff. You know, is that fair? There's two different schools of thought of this. One is to just say, well, hold on, you know, let's just say perception is reality, and what the customer says is what the customer thinks, and as an employee you have the responsibility to alter that perception. So, you know, I'm afraid that's just how it is. Or you can have a sort of a challenge process in place. In terms of having a challenge process in place, and I've seen some really, really big industries in themselves, I would suggest if you do have something in place, you keep it very simple, something that needs evidence, not about whether an act was done or not done, because that's perception, but if they're obviously talking about someone different, that would seem a little bit unfair to have that. The schemes, the challenge processes that work best are simple. They tend to have evidence proof. You have to submit a challenge within a certain time. You don't just challenge the month before the results come out, or so you can see whether you're above or below target. but I would be really conscious of challenge processes. They're costly, they take time, they take effort, and think of the opportunity cost of them. While everyone's challenging results, they're not making the outside world better for customers. Okay, so let's conclude this. So the top 5 tips, and again, there's some good reading from Harvard on this amongst other sources that you want to see it for customer satisfaction related pay. You need to have a reliable metric, and you need to have good feedback that you can believe in. You really need to link financial and strategic outcomes to customer satisfaction related pay and make sure it makes a difference. You know, and a little thing in brackets, mystery shopping is not customer satisfaction measurement. The processes and tools for understanding root causes you need to have in place. Like any sort of customer satisfaction process, you know, you want to be getting better at this. So really understanding, if you're doing a net promoter score, probing why people, you know, are giving you a 1 to 6 score. Really good for getting sort of the Six Sigma black belt people involved and understanding the root causes, because this is all about improving the organisation. And from that, we want organisational learning happening, because we want changes to behave. We want changes to happen that make people behave in a better way, that makes organisations more successful. So learning needs to come out of it. And a big part of anything like this is repeated communication. The half-life of most communications is very brief, perhaps 2 to 3 months maximum. So regularly keeping people updated with how the score's going, regularly demonstrating a link back to financial and strategic outcomes is really, really so important. So that was how that linked into top tips. I hope you found today's webinar useful. Have we got any questions, Charlotte?
No time for questions today. We've just gone over 30 minutes, but thank you very much. Like Greg said, if you'd like to take a look at the website, we've got lots more webinars for you to attend. We also have training courses. My email address is there. If you haven't received a copy in the post of our magazine, Customer Insight, please do send me an email with your address, and we'll pop that in the post for you. Or if there's anything else we can help you with. Okay, thank you very much.